I have with me today a guy called Gareth Thompson is his name. Kingdom Wrestling is what he does. We're going to delve into his life, his faith, his story, as well as Kingdom Wrestling. But firstly, hello, Gareth.
Hi, mate. How you doing?
I'm all right. Is it Gaz or Gareth? What do you prefer?
I prefer Gaz.
We'll
Gareth
go
is
with
my
Gaz.
Sunday name when I'm getting told off.
Yes. See, I'm an Andy, and the reason I'm an Andy is Andrew. I was in
Yeah,
trouble with my nan, Andrew, and I used to know. Oh, that's not good. So I prefer Andy because it doesn't remind me of being told off. So I get that completely.
yeah. My mum
Right.
used to throw the middle names in as well. She'd be like
Yes.
Gareth, Alan, Dean. I'd be like, and then depending on whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, if it was a bad thing, she'd use my dad's name, which is Thompson. If it's a good thing, she'd say Harren, which is her maiden name. So
Fine. If I call you Gareth, I'll watch you go pale and think he's in trouble.
yeah,
Okay, then, Gareth, let's start. So
right in there. First
I know.
thing.
So sorry, it's too much fun. Right now, Kingdom Wrestling. Let's just go straight to that because Kingdom Wrestling it has connotations of various things that people might assume and not. But just for the sake of clarity, what's Kingdom Wrestling all about?
So we are a professional wrestling charity that uses wrestling as a tool to share the gospel. We do that through our training school, which I'm sat in right now. I'm in the ring in our training school at St. Peter's in Shipley. We have people come in, they train with us, but we pray with them. We get into their lives. We have that coach relationship. We're able to dig into the drama and the stress and whatever else they've got going on and point them towards Jesus. We tour, so we do events for churches. They can bring us in and we'll do an event. We get a couple of hundred people in the room, people who wouldn't normally come to church, but they'll come to a wrestling show. Then I'll share my testimony in the middle of there and give them a chance to appeal to the gospel and give them a chance to respond to Jesus. And then we also have Wrestling Church, which is worship, word, and wrestling, body slams and baptisms, just a church service and a wrestling show just mushed together, doing both of those things. And again, we're seeing people come to faith through that, baptizing people. And that's the main stuff. Alongside that, we're currently working on a podcast. We're doing some schools work, speaking in schools. I do a lot of men's breakfasts. Sometimes we'll do church Sunday takeovers where we'll come and do David and Goliath in the ring on a Sunday and then preach on the back of that, different things like that. So we're very diverse, a bit of everything.
And I love the fact that you're sitting in a ring. I mean, I think
Yeah.
of a boxing ring, but okay, let's just start there. It's not a ring; it's a square. So why is it called a ring when it's not circle? Do you know?
Yeah, so this goes back to when they didn't have square rings with ropes and all the rest of it. It used to be there would just be a circle drawn on the ground, and that's why it was called a ring. That circle then became a stage, then became a platform, then became the box that we have now, with the ropes on to try and keep people in. It used to be just done with fencing or rope, just rope on sticks, but it was still in a circle. But it's just a name that has stuck since it was a ring, but has just stayed all the way through. Same with boxing. Boxing was done in the same way. That's why they have a boxing ring, but it's still square because it used to be just a circle. And you'll find with MMA and UFC, theirs is what they call the octagon. So it is more ring shaped. But again, that's come from the same kind of background of fighting being done in a ring on the ground and it just sticking.
I think sumo wrestling is still a circle, isn't it, in Japan?
It is, yeah, yeah. But it's on a big square platform. So you have the circles drawn out, but it's still on a square platform. And I think the square thing that's come from when it became more of a spectator sport and less so just a sport. If you go to places like Mongolia, for instance, where they still have wrestling on the ground on mud, there isn't even a ring. It's just an open space where two guys are just going at it and people just stood around watching.
Every day's a learning day. It's one of those things that's bugged me for years. Why are they boxing in a ring which is a square shape? So thank you for just that. That one's really bugged me for years.
Yeah, it's just an old school thing that's stuck around. Similar to like when they say that boxing and wrestling is done in the squared circle. Even the phrase "the squared circle" is acknowledging that it's called a ring, but it's square. Yeah.
Bit of history. Hey, every day's a learning day. I like history. I like learning how something came from this point to this point and what's the journey. And so we have the square ring, which just anyway, the ring is the name of the thing rather than the shape, which that makes sense to me now.
Yeah.
Right. So, why are you sitting talking to me whilst sitting in a place where you would normally do wrestling. Why? I mean, how did you do that? Because where it's a bit like when you watch someone doing the skiing. You know, they're coming down that big ramp, Eddie the Eagle Edwards coming down a ramp, and they chart. How does someone think, oh, I'll have a crack at that? There isn't like a ABC. Oh, now I'm doing it. There's. It feels like quite a big step.
Well, this is why we have a wrestling ring and a training school, because there's plenty of people out there who will be saying, I want to be a pro wrestler. Well, how do you do that? You need to train, you need to learn, you need to get in a ring, and you need to feel it, and you need to run the ropes, and you need to learn from someone who's a lot further on. We have like a matted floor space just outside the ring as well, where we'll teach different things and get people up to speed on that before we get them in the ring, so that when they're in the ring and it is a bit harder and it is a bit more rough, that they'll kind of be used to it and have the fundamentals down. For me, finding myself in this position has come from a life of, I would say, trauma and rubbish, and getting to a place where wrestling for me was what I watched on TV to escape what was going on at home. And it became a pipe dream, and it became an escape, and I'd love to watch it. But then when I was a young man, I then found the opportunity to train. So I just got a random message on YouTube from a friend who said, I know there's a training school in Blackburn, and I was in Yorkshire at the time. And he said, let's go together. And we'd jump on a coach or a bus or a train. However, we would get to Blackburn and we'd show up at this training school, get in the ring, and just start learning from other wrestlers how to do it. 6 months later, I'm then performing on shows, and I'm touring the country, and I'm doing events. And then when we started Kingdom last year, one of the first things I wanted to do was to do a training school where I lived, so that people like me, who are on our streets, who are in our communities, young men who are looking for something to do and something to aspire to, can come to a place like this, and women can come to a place like this and learn. And then we're raising up champions in our own community. And these people, when they're performing on shows locally, will become known. You know, I still get called Angel in the streets. Angel's my ring name. Barely anyone calls me Gaz. It's Angel. And I'll be in the butcher's buying some meat for the weekend. Angel, you know, and it's like, I'm like a little mini celebrity in my own streets because of it. And the kids all know me and stuff. So I want to give that opportunity to others. That's why this exists, is to be able to do that while also sharing the gospel. So I alluded to a bit of my childhood and testimony there, but wrestling was always the escape.
Well, let's go there then. So wrestling is an escape. What was it? I mean, you can go as detailed as you want to, but you know, why was there a need to escape? And how did wrestling then provide that, I guess, a distraction from what was going on that it enables you to get through whatever you were going through?
So when I was a kid, I grew up in a council estate called Braithwaite, which is in Keighley. It's a little town about 15 minutes from where I am now, in Shipley. Mum was married to my dad. They had 3 kids, so I was the eldest of 3 boys. We always play fought, you know, that boys do that. We're always throwing each other around and suplexing each other and stuff. But my dad left when I was 6, so he just left the family home. My mum took that quite hard and started drinking. She became quite abusive with us, so she would hit us. She would lock us in rooms when she was like hungover, so we couldn't get out. I'd often have to take my brothers to school, and then after school, I'd go around all the pubs in the town centre to try and find her. Then I would take my brothers home, I'd feed them, put them to bed. Then my mum would come home drunk, and I'd feed her and put her to bed. Like that was normal for me as a 6-7-year-old boy. That meant that she often left us with people who would babysit. One of those was an older male relative, a cousin, and he abused me sexually. That happened for about a year of my life. Whenever he babysat, he never did anything on my younger brothers. It was just me. And he was young himself. He was about 13 at the time, and I was like between 7 and 8. And again, even within that, like my mum leaving us like 3 boys with a 13-year-old to kind of babysit is reckless, you know, looking back. And while all that was going on, my grandmother, Gladys, the Welsh dragon, we called her. So my family are all from Kinethley, South Wales, hence the name Gareth, Welsh heritage. She would have me stay at hers on a Friday night. She was a devout Catholic woman. She had more pictures of Mary around the house than she had of her own kids. And she'd take me there on a Friday. I'd stay at hers. And that would be her kind of pulling me out of that situation and being like, tonight, you can stay with me. And she used to feed me well. She always made parking cake, or she'd have like a full English or a porridge waiting for me in the morning. She'd pray for me. She would buy me books on dinosaurs and bugs and the human body. And she'd watch wrestling. So she would watch the world of sport wrestling, like Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks. She'd watch all that on the Saturday afternoon. Then she found that Channel 4 late at night would often play the WWF or WCW. So she'd record it on a VHS tape recorder. And then when I came to stay, she'd be like, let's watch the wrestling. So I'm there watching Shawn Michaels and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Hardy Boys and Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. And I'm watching these guys and I'm like watching going, I want to be like that. I want to be strong. I want to be loved. I want to be a superstar. I want to be confident, because I wasn't feeling any of that stuff as a young boy, and rightly so with all that that's going on at home. So that was my escape. My grandmother was watching wrestling with her, and we'd talk wrestling, and we would debate who the better fighter was, and she'd tell me that, you know, Mick McManus and Kendo Nagasaki and all these guys are proper bruisers, and all these WWF are just posers, pretty boys. And we debate that. But that was my escape. And then when I got to 15, 14, my mum came home drunk one night, and she said, like, that's it, you're a grown man, just threw me out in the streets. And I ended up sleeping in a skip for 8 weeks. And then I found myself in homeless hostels, bouncing around. That wasn't any good. People self-harming, drugs, alcohol abuse, fighting all the time. When I was a kid and my abuse situation got out and was made public after there was a court case and the guy went to prison, I got bullied for that at school. And then I didn't get any GCSEs. I'm now in homeless hostels. And so my life was an absolute mess. But the one thing I could rely on was I could go to my nan's and watch wrestling, or I could play my wrestling video games, or I could watch it on YouTube or whatever, or I could just escape life and just get absorbed in these characters. And that was my fix, if you want to call it that.
So that explains a lot of where the wrestling came from. Kingdom Wrestling isn't just wrestling, it's wrestling plus faith. So what's the faith element for you? You said your gran was a devout Catholic, but where's your relationship with Jesus Christ come from out of all of that that's led to Kingdom Wrestling?
So the primary school and secondary school I went to was a Roman Catholic school. So there was always mass, and we went to the church around the corner. I would say I had a faith influence as a young lad. I'd never really truly connected what I knew and what I heard with what I was feeling. And that was never a thing. I thought it was just something that I did, that my gran wanted me to do. And so I did it for her. And I was in the choir. I had a voice. I could sing. So I was in the choir for a bit. You can never imagine that now. And when I was made homeless, I didn't have any time for that because I was too busy focusing on getting my life together. It wasn't until I was a young man, maybe around 20, 21, I'd come to Bradford to get my tongue pierced. And I was with a girl at the time, and she saw an old friend. They hooked up and were kind of really happy to see each other. And we got invited to their house, and we struck up a friendship with these guys. And we would go and hang out with them on weekends, and we'd play Call of Duty and drink beer and eat pizza. And then one morning they invited us to church. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm expecting organs and pews and whatever. And I'm hungover, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah, why not? And we get there and we walk in, and it's not like that at all. It's like open seating, a live band, similar to what most churches are, kind of like now. There's beanbags at the back and kids running around, and there's a coffee machine. And the vicar, Howard, he shook my hand and took me for a coffee, asked me some questions. And it just felt a little bit more personal. And then I'm sat there in the worship, and everyone's singing, and I'm crying, and I can't stop crying. And I'm trying to be a hard man, and I'm trying to look like I've got it together. And I am ugly sobbing in this worship. And after the service, this guy came over and he goes, I saw you crying. I was like, nah, you didn't. You didn't. No. I said, no, I did. And I can tell you why. I was like, okay, all right, I'm intrigued now. What's going on here? Okay, yeah, go on. And he said, you've just felt love for the first time in your life, and you didn't know what to do with it. And he was right. The mask had slipped, and my heart was ripped open, and there was just all this emotion. that I couldn't control. And he was like, you need to give this thing a go. So I started attending the church, and it was a C of E church called St. John's in Bowling, Bradford. And I moved over to Bradford. We lived literally across the street from the church. One of the guys at the church was a landlord and had properties. So he was like, oh yeah, you can come and stay at one of mine. And so we moved in, and I got married in the church because I thought that was the right thing to do. Like, I was attending home church. I was there on Sundays and Saturday nights, sometimes at Saturday night services. I was in the youth team dancing around in monkey outfits for the kids. Like, I was all in, kind of giving this everything I could to try and understand it and get it. And on my wedding day, my grandmother was there, and she'd had dementia for a few years. And she was obviously such a big part of my childhood. And it was great to have her there, but she really wasn't well. And, you know, she was herself that day. Like, there's this point in the service where she just shouted, because I had a bit of purple in my hair. I looked a bit gothy then. She just shouted out in this thick Welsh accent, "Gareth, wash that purple out your hair. You look stupid." And in the middle of the wedding. And I'm just like, well, there's my gran. There she is. And we got photos together, and then she went home because she was unwell. And sadly, she passed away that night. I'd got home, was having a shower in the morning after the wedding night, and my phone goes, and it's my youngest brother in floods of tears telling me that she passed away. And I took that quite hard, because at such a young stage in my faith journey, I was under the wrong impression that becoming a Christian means you don't deal with stuff like that anymore, that you're on the winning team, you know? Turned out about 6 or 7 months later that my new wife had actually been having an affair the whole time. And so it just hit me hard. And I found myself unemployed, depressed, living in a box room, having lost everything within a year, and questioning it all and angry with God. And then a guy called Dave Kendall came, knocked on my door, forced his way in the house, which is a brave thing to do, because I had started wrestling training at this point. So he came in and like sat at the table with me, and he said, "I know you've not been at church. I want to help you. I think that there is some unforgiveness and some bitterness and some hurt that you haven't dealt with, or you haven't tried to deal with. And you've gone back to what helped before, because what helped before was surviving. What helped before was putting the mask on and retreating and getting away from it. Because that's all I'd ever done." And so he was like, "I think we need to technically reprogram you to get you to a place where you can actually start nailing this stuff to the cross." And so we went on a journey of forgiveness together, and it was really, really powerful. I met with my mum, had a very long and frank discussion with her, found my dad. I've got a relationship with him now, which is fantastic. We had some beers and some tears over some hugs, kind of reminiscing over my life and where I've been, and kind of filling him in. So yeah, like I said, we've got a good relationship now. And then I tried getting back with my wife at the time. There was another affair, and you know, I just realized that no matter what I did and how much I forgave, that it still doesn't mean I need to be a doormat. And actually, and I say this to people now, if they're in a relationship where the other person is unwilling to change after you've done everything you can do, it doesn't mean that you're a doormat, and you can forgive someone and still walk away from a relationship that's hurting you. That's okay, as long as you don't carry the baggage with you. So we got divorced, and then we got stuck. And this was the real turning point. I'm getting there. This was the real turning point. I'm sat with Dave, and we're saying, look, I think I've dealt with everything we can deal with here, apart from my abuser. And he says, look, let's pray about it. That's the first, the last, the only thing we can do in this case, because he went to prison. I don't know where he was. I have no contact with him. The family had kind of said we want nothing to do with him, so no one knew. So I'm praying for him, and I prayed a very simple prayer. And I prayed to God, and this was like the moment. If you can help me deal with this, then I'm all in. You've got me. And I understand now that bad stuff still happens. It's how I respond to it that needs to change. But if you can help me deal with this, because I don't see any way that we can do this, then I'm in. The next day, I'm at work. So I got a new job. I'm working at CEX, computer exchange store, full of dirty moshers that look like me if you ever go to one of them. And I'm serving on the tills, and my abuser walked in. Like the very next day, he walked in and joined the queue.
Wow.
Coming up the queue, and I am absolutely panicking. I've got 100 things running through my head. I could jump the counter. I know that the fire door doesn't work. He's not escaping. I've just learned how to do a tombstone pile driver. I could drill him. I'm not a little boy anymore. Hang on a minute. Now I'm really scared. I want to run away. I want to avoid it. Just all kind of going on all at once, like in milliseconds. I'm feeling one thing and I know that I'm feeling the next. And next thing I know, I'm stood across the counter from him and I'm serving him. And that I'm serving him was revealed to me a few years after that is powerful, that I was serving this man who had destroyed me as a kid. And I got his DVDs, and as I put it through the till and I gave him his change back, I held his hand and we locked eyes. And I could see just as much fear in him as there was in me. But I knew this was it. This was the moment that God had orchestrated this interaction. I challenged him and he'd gone, there you go, Gaz. And as I'm holding his hand, I looked him dead in the eye and I said, I forgive you for what you did. And I just let go. And he wombled out the store, like completely confused as to what had just happened. I had to go take a break and rinse my face and call Dave and just let all this emotion out. And then I sat there in the staff room, confronted with my own words. Okay, God, if you can help me deal with this, I'm all in. And there I am sat there going, well, I guess I'm all in now. and from that point, I was like, everything I want to do, it has to point back to Jesus. It just has to. My work, I went to work for Christians Against Poverty. They helped me out of debt. At the time that I was living in the box room, Dave worked for them. So I worked for them for 7 years. I ran a debt center and a job club, helping people with those issues, but also sharing my story with them over the couch. And I would say, where are you hiding your letters? Because I used to hide mine under the microwave or under the pillowcases and that. And so I'm talking from experience. And that just really moved people. And then I was wrestling and I was touring and I was sat in the backstage area one night and there was a guy who was like, could tell there was something going on. And I just asked him, are you okay? And anything I can help with, can I pray for you? And he opened up that he'd been abused himself as a kid. And I'm then kind of pastoring this guy from afar. And then I'm praying for other wrestlers before we go out to a match, praying for safety. And then when we get back, we're praying for healing. And I'm next thing I know, I'm pastoring a gaggle of wrestlers. And I was like, okay, God, where are you in this? I'm doing this all behind the curtain. What am I doing in front of the curtain? And then I changed my character to Gareth Angel. I became a Christian pro wrestler. I used to quote the Bible in my promos. And I was just openly that I'm a Christian. And then I started sharing my story in bigger platforms. And God was just kind of going, there you go, there you go, there you go. I gave you this as a kid. You're now going to use it as a man, and you're going to use it for me, and you're going to use it to save people. And Kingdom Wrestling was born, and now here we are.
Wow. I tell you the story that comes to mind. I don't know if you've ever read The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom, where there's a moment right at the end of the book. I think it's at the last but one page or something. And she meets the guy, one of the prison guys, one of the SS Nazi guys. And she meets him and he's become a Christian. And he comes up to her because he's full of joy of Jesus. And she's got this moment of, this is the guy that I was willing to kill. As a Christian, I was going to kill this guy. I was happy to try. And she's confronted by him. And it's that sort of similar thing of you of, okay, do you mean what you say? Kind of, this is God, you know, and she shook his hand finally. And it took so much will. But in that moment was a defining moment. And then all that Corrie ten Boom went on to do is sort of springboarded out of her willingness to hold that guy's hand, which is exactly what you did in CEX. And it takes guts. I can understand some of the bouncing around of emotions of what you went through, but it's really hard. But in that, God has then transformed you into this man that can do so much. And you know, I'm so sorry with the stuff you had as a kid, but I'm so glad that God was able to redeem that,
Yeah.
as only He can, into what you're doing and helping others through Christians Against Poverty, or through Kingdom Wrestling. There's a lot in there that I could happily unpack with you for the next 2 hours, which I'm not I haven't got the time to do. But I guess the question that comes to mind is, you've now got daughters, you're in a new relationship. How have you found navigating out of hell, and yet you've now got these little people who are looking to you as dad? How do you navigate that in the relationship you have, the relationships you had, when God is in who you are?
That's such a big question because it's
Is he not?
continual.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's continually evolving and changing. When I knew me and my wife Beth were pregnant with Isabella, my eldest, who's 4 now, I was confronted again by my childhood because I'm sat in church and someone's sharing a story about miscarriage, and we'd recently been through a miscarriage, and we were pregnant again. So obviously, really excited that we're back on that journey, and I loved this new human being so incredibly that I then realized, hang on a second, I wouldn't dare let anything that happened to me as a young man happen to this child ever. So I had a new lens. And so I then had to almost go back to my mum and my dad and forgive them again, because it suddenly became a much bigger, I don't want to say the word failing, but I feel like it was a bigger failing on my parents' part for that stuff to have happened to us.
Mm.
Because I just, and then like God's love for me, if I felt I knew God's love, and then all of a sudden this little bean comes along and I love it this much, and like my arms aren't even in the camera right now, but if I could stretch, I'd go past the ropes of this ring that's 16 feet. Like God's love must be even bigger than that. And it just gave me a new appreciation for what God had done for me. And becoming a child of His superseded anything that had happened in my childhood. It just did. There was a line drawn under it. And I say this now for my girls and my wife, there is a line drawn from my past to my future and my present, because Jesus is in the middle, and nothing that was there in my childhood is going to come into their lives. I'm not going to allow it. I'm going to stand firm and strong. They are not going to be abused. I'm not going to walk out on those girls. My wife is not going to have an alcohol addiction. They are not going to be homeless at 15. They are going to be able to share with me their deepest, darkest fears and secrets, and I'm going to love them nevertheless. That they can rely on me to protect them and provide for them and be their father, and for my wife to be their mother, but for them to know Jesus too, and for them to have that from day one and not have to go through all that stuff and fight to find it. That Jesus is there, front and center. When we pray together at night before they go to bed, we're asking Jesus for His love to follow us. We say what we're thankful for before bedtime, and we pray together, the 4 of us. Like, Jesus is a part of our life. Church is a part of our life. The community of church is a part of our life. And so they're never going to have to go through any of that stuff, because I just won't allow it. And a part of that is my defiance and my character. But a big part of that is just, I want to be the best dad I can be, because I've seen what a bad dad is. But I want to be the best, and I want to be everything that my daughters can rely on, and show them what a good man is as well. Like, I don't want them to grow up and then, find themselves in relationships with men that don't value them and don't treat them with respect, and won't fight for them and won't protect them, provide for them. I want them to know what a good man looks like. And I'm not saying that means like, they have a ponytail and a beard and tattoos. That's not what I'm saying. Like, the characteristics of a good man, of a good godly man who loves Jesus and loves them, because that's what they deserve. Yeah.
Amen to that. Where'd you go? You've had so much of darkness in your past. and yet you're now, that darkness in a sense helps you to be a better light because you are willing to go into the darkness of other guys, and I guess some girls coming through as well,
Yeah.
some men and women, because you've been through some darkness, which means you know where the light is. And I remember as a kid, there was this guy and he did this example of how powerful light can be and how tiny a light can illuminate. And he got the church completely, really, really dark. And he had this box and he had this tiny little feeble light. And there was one pinprick in the outside of this box. And he put the light in the box in a dark room. And as he moved the box around, we're all saying, we can see the light. And the simple illustration of that was, that's how tiny we might feel, but how much the light always wins. The darkness cannot overcome it. I remember my hometown's Wolverhampton, and the motto for the Wolverhampton, because it's very old, out of darkness cometh light. And the light shines in the darkness, and the smallest of lights as we may feel still can illuminate in ways that we can't comprehend. And that's what I guess you're doing through Kingdom Wrestling. So just moving on to that, what is it that you do with Kingdom Wrestling? Just give us some of the, what happens in a week. What's your week look like?
So if I were to give you an action-packed week, so we have steady weeks, which involves training classes going on during the week, Bible studies happening. There's podcast recordings, radio interviews, that kind of stuff. And a lot of kind of preparing for events and connecting with churches. A week would look like on a Monday is a family day for me. So on Monday, I'm with the girls and my wife, and we treat, because Sunday is often quite full with church and other stuff. So Monday is our day. Tuesday, I'm in the ring. We've got one-to-one classes during the day, and then the evening we have an adults class. The guys will come during the early evening. We'll talk together, and then we'll get in the ring and we'll beat each other up for a couple of hours. And then Wednesday is a similar day with evening classes. Thursday is kids and youth. So later on today, there's going to be some 8 to 16-year-olds coming in little groups, getting in the ring, teaching them some stuff. And then we've got a women's self-defense class tonight, which is one of those things that I really wanted to be able to provide. My wife was in an abusive relationship before she got with me. And I've done some ambassador work for Restored, if you know Restored. With Rebecca. I did some ambassador work for them, just encouraging men to talk about the issues of male violence towards women and challenging that. So we have the police come in. So we've got a female police officer who comes in. And then me and her, we go through different techniques and stuff and teach women how to defend themselves. And just go over good practice stuff like sharing your journey with people, using apps. Even something as simple as if you've got an attacker in the worst case scenario, if you can scratch them and get some of their DNA under your fingernails, you're going to help a conviction down the line. Just even something as simple as that. And then on Fridays, we'll often be preparing for an event at the weekend. So most of our events happen on Fridays or Saturdays. They could be here in Shipley or in Bradford, or we're in St. Helens at the end of this month, Christian Life Centre. And then we're in St. Francis in Mackworth in October, in Derby. It's we tour a lot. So Friday we'll be packing the ring down, getting all of the lighting and the staging and stuff together. Maybe we'll load it in a van that day, and then we'll travel out to an event. We'll unpack it all, get the area set up, do an event. And an event could look like a testimony event where we invite the local community and they have a couple of matches. I do my testimony in the middle, a bit of a gospel appeal, couple more fights, and I'll normally fight in the last fight of the night. And then the church then kind of picks those people up and takes them on to Alpha or so on. Or it'll be Wrestling Church, where we'll have a bit of worship when people arrive, which again, we try to, like you mentioned earlier about being the light in dark places. I've been around unchurched people that much, and people from council estates and working class people, that some stuff in church just isn't going to register with these people anymore. Talking about the Greek derivative of words, if you've even got a smell of a southern accent, they're not really going to listen to you. And the worship, they don't want to be singing about love. They want to be singing about power and praise. We want to know the power of God, and we want to praise God. So we change the worship up, we make it a bit rocky. And we tend to get, I would say, 90% of people who come to these events are non-Christian or haven't been in church before. They'll listen to the worship, then we'll have a little bit of a fight, maybe 2 fights. One of those fights will tell a Bible story or touch on a theme. So that might be David and Goliath. That's a really easy one that people can understand the concept of. Or we might do one where two wrestlers are chained together, and then we talk about Jesus breaking chains and what chains us down in our lives. And we follow it up with the preach. And the preach will relate to the match. We drop the curtain so people immediately realize that wrestling's scripted, that it is all performance and storytelling. No one's actually hurt. It's all tricks. And then we unpack that from the Bible, and we quote scripture, and we bring it in. And we do it in a way that is almost as easy to understand as someone who maybe can't read or write. We treat that as our base. The people that we're coming into contact with, let's assume they can't read, they can't write, that they've got other stuff going on. We need to make it relatable to their real world situations and scenarios. We don't want to say, oh, I had a problem on my annual family skiing trip in the French Alps. They're not going to get that. What we want to talk about is the chains that chained us down. Maybe it was debt or addiction, or it was a tough family situation, or it was my childhood past traumas, or it was whatever. And we just really dumb it down, make it relatable. And then we'll finish with some more worship and maybe another big fight to finish it off with that has like some big characters and just a bit of drama. And the good guy always wins. We get to it, it's always the good guy who wins, because we know that that's what's going to happen. Jesus is going to come back and he's going to win. So we always want to finish with that. And then that's a general week. Sunday is again for me, Sunday and Monday is like my weekend. Sunday I'm with church with the family and stuff. And in and around that, a lot of the time is spent writing funding bids and like policy work and all that kind of stuff. We've got to make sure our safeguarding's on point. We've got to make sure the charity commission is fully up to date with our stuff, and the trustees are well informed and all of that. So yeah, there's, as much as you see me jumping around and flying around the ring and teaching and speaking, there is all the admin that goes on in the background as well. So I got to find time for that.
But that's part of what we do, right? When you're doing something, you want to do it right. The Bible talks about honoring those in authority. So we want to honor that. I mean, we pay licenses for music. It's quite expensive.
Sure.
But it's doing the right stuff in order to do what God's asking us to do. So we're not just doing the good stuff, but we're actually doing the God stuff, which is, takes effort.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, it really speaks to the credibility of what we do. And if we're going to be a good witness for Jesus, we can't just be, fairground rides doing things off the back of whatever. Like I need a parent to come in here and to trust that their child is safe with us. And we need the men and women who come here to feel like they're being protected and looked after as well. And the churches that we go to, for them to know that we have insurances and risk assessments and all that stuff. So that we're a proper outfit. We're not just guys in a ring just showing up with a bunch of wrestlers. And like, don't get me wrong, the wrestlers are characters. Okay, most people in wrestling are in it for a varying amount of reasons. Most of it's ego. But most of my wrestlers aren't Christian. But we have started baptizing wrestlers now, which is great because they're all coming to faith now. So that's a mission field in and of itself. But when we show up to do an event, we might look like a ragtag bunch of weirdos off the street. But actually, there's a real brotherhood, a camaraderie. We're all here to support each other. The guys will always say that when they come to a Kingdom Wrestling event, it's unlike any other wrestling promotion they work for, because they're looked after, they're loved on. We pray before the event. They know they can open up. They are safe, they're protected. And so a lot of the guys who work for us, like, they really enjoy doing it, and they take in what's happening and what's being said, and all of that is witness towards Jesus. All of that is, Christians aren't weird. They actually look after us. Churches are great. The Christian people who are bringing us hot dogs and water in the back are looking after us. And it just all feeds into that narrative of, like, the church is here for you. Jesus is here for you. And we love you.
I can't find a better place to end a conversation really than that. How can people get hold of what you're doing? Maybe they want to come to one of your events, or they want to actually, it's a church that wants to get in touch with you. I guess you've got a website.
Yeah, everything's on the website. So it's kingdomwrestling.org. If you go on there, you can book us for an event. You can get in touch with us. If you want to donate, you can do that on there. We have a partnership with Stewardship, so people can give monthly through that and gift aid it. If you want to find us on social media, it's Kingdom Wrestling UK. So if you just do @Kingdom Wrestling UK, we're on pretty much everything: TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Insta, a lot. You can find us on there. And if you're wanting to buy tickets for events, the event page is on both the website and on Facebook, on social media channels. You can book tickets through there as well.
I'm Gaz, not Gareth, from Kingdom Wrestling. Thank you so much for your time. There's a lot in there, and I hope people can access that. And if you're struggling with some of the stuff you've heard, maybe it's triggering a nerve in your own laugh. I'm pretty sure get hold of Gaz and he'll sort you in the right direction. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure and delight. We met at big church, not big church, met at the gathering with Christian Vision for Men, which was fab. He gives the best hugs in the world. So, Gaz, thank you for your time.
Bless you, mate. Thank you.